morning, ladies and gentlemen. I'm delighted to be here at the Fraud and Cybercrime Symposium. Without a doubt, there are an amazing array of technologies that are coming online right now that will, in many ways, create a world 10 years from now that is completely unrecognizable to today. As a futurist, I spend a lot of my time going into research labs around the world and talking to top scientists and startup companies about the innovations that they're working on, and then helping my clients to understand what that means to their business, working with them on innovation strategies and looking at ways that these technologies can be used to help them make money, save money, or solve a problem. But as I examine these technologies, I also find that there are increasing implications for security and privacy that are going to impact all of us and are opening up new threat vectors for cyber criminals as well. Industries like healthcare, agriculture, manufacturing, transport, and logistics are going to be completely changed by these technologies. But as this happens, we need to look very carefully at the implications for society. So what I'd like to do over the next few minutes is weave you in and out of the here and now and the future and show you some of the things that you should be aware of as you start looking at new technologies. So to start with, I've identified 3 major trends that will take place over the coming 10 years. The first is that new devices will create new opportunities. Believe it or not, the iPhone was launched only in 2007, less than 10 years ago. Think about how that has changed your life. How many of you would leave your house without your smartphone now? There's more computing power on your gadget that you carry in your pocket than the computers that NASA used to send man to the moon. The same thing's going to happen with the technologies that are coming online now. The second mega trend is that everything, and I mean everything, is going to be connected. Sensors are getting so small that they'll be built into your clothing. They'll be built into every package that you buy. It's underpinned by this really boring addressing technology called IP version 6, but it will allow 340 trillion devices to connect to the internet. And then the third mega trend is privacy. Will it be gone forever? And as I talk to you today, think about the implications of that. Before I take you on a ride to the future, let's set the scene for where we're at now in 2015. I'd like to start with our favorite gadget, which is the mobile phone. We love our gadgets. We download all kinds of applications onto them. But what you may not be aware of is that applications are not always what they seem to be. A very famous example is Flappy Bird, and there are about 300 clones. I don't know what the attraction of Flappy Bird is, but a recent research study showed that 79% of these Flappy Bird clones contain malware that can get at the root of the operating system of your mobile. It can get to anything that you've got on your mobile device. And that's not the only one. There are a whole range of applications that do things surreptitiously. They download your contact book and upload them to servers. A flashlight tracks you everywhere that you're going, sending your movements to advertisers. Even an app like Snapchat, which was designed to protect your privacy by giving you self-destruct messages, last year their servers were hacked, and it was found that they had uploaded details of close to 5 million people taking their address books without anyone's knowledge. And then there is malware that infects a computer, and from the computer can infect your iOS device. And then there's Wi-Fi hacking. It really is a hostile environment that many people don't think of when they think about security. How many of you have security applications on your phone monitoring what's happening? Probably, well, in this room, given the audience, maybe a lot of you, but in general, very, very few. One of the major trends that's happening with respect to smartphones and credit cards is contactless payments. I'm sure you've all heard of PayWave. It uses a technology called Near Field Communications, or NFC, to let you wave a device and conduct a transaction, sometimes requiring a PIN, but not always requiring a PIN. The technologies that you see on the credit cards are also coming to your smartphone on this environment where you might have hostile malware. There are applications like Apple Pay that use the same sort of contactless technology. Optus has recently come out with a really cool innovation where if your phone doesn't have the near-field communication chip in it, you can buy a SIM card that has NFC in it and be able to charge things right on your phone. Another new technology emulates magnetic strips, and that's from a company called LoopPay that was just bought by Samsung. And what it will allow you to do is wave your phone near any traditional terminal, and it makes it seem like you've run through a magnetic strip. So in your digital wallet, you'll be loading up your credit cards, your driver's license, all sorts of things, all on your mobile phone. What happens if you lose your phone? What happens if you don't set a PIN and proper security on your phone? Then there are a range of what I would call fintech, financial technology disruptors. A couple of key ones, and some really important ones for the banking industry, are peer-to-peer lending. You may not have heard of this, but it works similar in concept to the way that Airbnb does, where people who have a spare room in their house can find people who want to have a room that they rent directly, cutting out the middlemen, cutting out the banks. So with peer-to-peer lending, what these platforms are doing is connecting borrowers and lenders, giving better rates of return for people who have money that they're willing to invest, and lower interest rates for people who want to borrow money. We're only starting to see this come into Australia. A couple of early companies are RateSetter, Society One, and one that launched late last year called Thin Cats Australia that's targeting the financial market. Another big trend that we're only starting to see right now are robo-advisors. And unlike the picture I've put up here, they really don't look like robots. They're softbots, software robots that basically cut out the middleman, the financial advisor, and help you automatically adjust your investment portfolio. They claim to give much, much better rates of return over the long term than you would get with a traditional financial advisor or that you would get just trying to manage it yourself. And then, of course, we have Bitcoin, and I know we'll be speaking about that a bit later in the conference. Bitcoin is a really interesting cryptocurrency, and there are others as well, but they've already been hacked. There was a big case about a year ago from a company called Mt. Gox, where over 500 million was stolen. And just a few weeks ago, the CEO of that company was arrested in Japan. Cryptocurrency is causing a lot of consternation for governments. How do you track where money is? How do you tax it? Some big issues to be thought about. And then we have identity theft. So many people just do not realize that they're leaving digital footprints with everything that they do online. Think about what you put onto Facebook. You might put the birth date of your child, you put where you're going, when you're on vacation. You might as well be putting out a flag that says, hey, I've got a nice new flashy car and a beautiful house, and I'm going to be away for a month. Please come and rob me. Or you think about the information that a company like Google is collecting because of all the different apps that you use, and they're pulling it together. They protect it like a gold mine because that's their intellectual property. But what if someone got your Google sign-in ID and was able to amass all of this information and use it against you? Or worst case, there was a data breach or a hack of a company like Google or Facebook or any other big social media giants. And data breaches happen. Late last year, the US Post Office had a data breach, and details for 800,000 staff members were divulged, including things like their social security numbers, their home addresses, their email, birth dates, all the sorts of things that you would need to commit identity fraud. Here in Australia, we recently passed the data retention legislation, and what that's going to mean is that every ISP and telco in the country, large and small, is going to be retaining what they call metadata from all of your online transactions. So it's going to be stored on servers, big and large companies, and it's going to be a goldmine of information. One of the things that I fear is that well-funded cybercriminals will want to get into that goldmine, or there could be a potential data breach inadvertently. So what's hackable? Already, we have seen aircraft, satellite communications that have been hacked through their in-flight entertainment systems and Wi-Fi systems. We've seen servers in nuclear plants that have been exposed to external attacks. We've seen smart TVs attacked. I know some security researchers that put black masking tape over the camera on their TV because they know that somebody could use that camera to watch what they're doing in their living room. We've seen examples where programmable controllers in prisons have been remotely tapped into to literally open all the prison doors at once. And by the way, these are the same controllers that open the doors in nuclear facilities. And then we have internet-connected devices like baby monitors that have been hacked into. Late last year, there was a couple in Ohio who woke up in the middle of the night to a sound of a man screaming, "Baby, baby, wake up!" And it turned out somebody had hacked into their baby monitor. There's already a search engine that lets you search for Internet of Things attached devices. We're starting to get to a kind of crazy world where it's filled with more and more devices connected, malware coming into the system. Any weak link in the chain can get you to something else. If you've got a baby monitor that can be hacked into and it's on the same network as your computer where you're doing banking, could they theoretically get into your bank account details? Unfortunately, the answer is yes. Now, one of the things that I talked about in my opening was the fact that gadgets equal more opportunities. Well, just like gadgets will create opportunities, they will also create new threat vectors. So what are the kinds of gadgets that we'll be seeing over the coming 10 years? Let's start with what we're seeing now. Wearable devices are starting to become popular already, and there are 4 basic categories that I would describe to you. Smartwatches, fitness or activity trackers, smart eyewear like Google Glass and Lastra see-through glasses and some others, as well as smart clothing that you might wear as an athlete to track how you're performing. Last week, Hewlett-Packard came out with a study looking at the top 10 smartwatches, and what they found was that all of them had at least one vulnerability. Some of them allowed pairing with a device that was not your iPhone or your Android device without any security. And I won't say iPhone specifically because that wasn't one of the issues. But the point is that if you've got smart watches and they can be paired with some other device, what information do you have on there? A lot of them will allow firmware upgrades without encryption. A lot of them don't have any kind of pin or locking mechanism, so if you dropped your watch or it was taken off of somewhere that you've left it, people can find out all of the information that you have on there. Another really game-changing technology that I think will shape our lives over the coming 10 years is augmented reality. And I'll show you a couple of examples in these pictures. What I'm talking about with augmented reality is the ability to add a contextual overlay to the things that you're seeing, and there are many, many applications. One example would be if you're wearing glasses or perhaps on the windscreen of your car, having a projection of the navigation directions, similar to what you might see in a nav system, but without having to look down at a nav system, or you might just be walking and you're not looking back and forth at your phone. There are industrial applications for this as well. The pictures that I've shown on the bottom left show an innovation from CSIRO, where if you've got, let's say, a specialized aircraft that needs to be maintained, and you've got a worker in the field who's not trained on that particular platform, they might be wearing these special goggles, but what they see is also shown to an expert back in headquarters who has all the manuals and can see in real time what the remote worker is seeing. and say to that worker, put the plug in over here, and what the worker sees is that little orange hand pointing at the exact place where the plug is supposed to go. You can imagine the implications of this are very, very useful for industry, and it's actually one of the big areas where augmented reality is already starting to take off. But there are lots of applications. Another one that you might be able to relate to is, let's say you're touring archaeological ruins and you're trying to imagine what this might have looked like 500 years ago. Well, just hold up your smartphone, or if you're wearing glasses, you can see what this building looked like. But you don't necessarily need glasses. CommBank has launched a really cool app about a year ago, which is a property locator device which uses the camera in your phone along with GPS, and you literally point it at any house and it will tell you the address of the house, when it was sold, how much it was for, information about it, some really amazing things. Another innovation that's going to shape our world is the introduction of very, very high definition 3D cameras. An example is the Intel RealSense chip. It's a chip that will be fitted into all kinds of phones and tablets and laptops. It is so sensitive that not only can it recognize faces, it can recognize your mood. It can recognize how you're reacting to things. It's sensitive enough that if you were to hold up a rubber ducky, it could take that, put together a 3D file, a CAD file, send it to a 3D printer, and have it print out. Sensitive enough that you could actually use gestures to control your computer or to manipulate an object. And technology to do a green screen effect, to take out this background and insert me into a Skype call. Match that with augmented reality and you start to get some really interesting connotations. So one of the things that has happened is that there's a big push to take these smart glasses and put them into smart contacts and combine the technology of augmented reality and ICT communications with biotech. So imagine that you're wearing contacts and we're looking at each other. I'm in a room like this and I see a range of familiar faces, and I know I've met some of you before, but I may not remember everyone's name. But I get little heads-up display that tells me who you are, where I've met you, able to look at your social profile and give me a conversation piece that allows me to engage with you. So why would you put these smart contacts in? Well, one of the reasons is that they also have auto-focusing capabilities. So imagine if you're like me and you need reading glasses, suddenly you're not popping your glasses on and off. The glass is auto-focused depending on where you're looking at. And it turns out that our tears provide some incredibly rich medical information. If you're a diabetic, you can measure glucose levels directly from tears. You can also pick up biomarkers for a whole range of cancerous and precancerous conditions and monitor, let's say, whether a cancer patient is still in remission. They're even looking at applications where you can dispense drugs directly through the contacts. Now you can imagine having this kind of capability where in the Google patent, if you want to take a picture, you just blink twice. How would you know if someone's wearing these and they're starting to take pictures of you or film you? We're getting into a bit of a brave new world here, and with all of this external information that you can pull together, identity fraud through social engineering is going to become much, much easier. And by the way, by the time something like this comes on market in about 7 years, these opaque bits are going to be translucent, most likely made out of graphene. So let's talk a little bit more about healthcare and embedded technology. We're already using fitness trackers. The problem is that every device and gadget that we have has its own data repository. And to solve that problem, companies like Apple and Google are putting together apps like HealthKit and Google Fit that will allow you to take the information silos and integrate them together. The question is, if these apps are malware, some of them may be, What happens if someone hacks into or gets a hold of all that information? Can criminals do something bad to you if they have a whole range of information about your health? And it's not just wearables, it's implantables too. Implantables, in a surgical sense, provide a very, very real benefit for many people around the world. And they're fitted with wireless technologies, two-way communication. It makes sense. You don't want to be cut into just to have your heart pacemaker fixed. Unfortunately, wherever you've got two-way communications, there are always criminals that are ready to take advantage of it. In this case, there were white hat researchers, and about 2 years ago, one of the researchers found that they could hijack a pacemaker and deliver an 830-volt jolt to someone's pacemaker, enough to kill you. Another white hat researcher, who happened to be a diabetic, decided to look into the safety of insulin pumps. And what he found was that from up to 500 feet away, half a mile, they could deliver fatal doses of insulin. Remote assassination through medical devices has suddenly become a reality. Now, right now, people implant devices when they have medical conditions. But is it so far-fetched that in the future, people will willingly put in devices into their system because they want to augment their memory or have onboard processing or storage in their person? That could very well happen, and there are people working on it. But you don't even have to go that far in the future. Anybody here heard of the Proteus pill? The Proteus pill is already FDA approved. It's a tiny sensor, smaller than the head of a pin and getting smaller and smaller every year, that is embedded in a pill that you take. It gets activated by gastric acids. It communicates with a skin patch that you might wear, like a Band-Aid on your skin, which in turn communicates with your smartphone. It's really useful for someone like an elderly patient who may forget to take medicine, and a carer, whether it be a loved one or a doctor, needs to monitor how much medication they've taken. But there are implications of this as well. There are lots of other uses. I'd like to show you just a quick video of one of the other uses of this ingestible pill.
Forget the blue pill and the red pill. In a wild futuristic innovation, Motorola...
Imagine you take these devices, they stay in your system for about 2 weeks, and then through your natural digestion process, they eliminate. But what would happen if someone were to harvest these eliminated transmitters and you've got them as your biometric password? Is there a threat that could be obtained from this same vector that we're using to help monitor our health and make ourselves more secure? And the answer is, if there's money at the end of the chain, there'll always be a cyber criminal that's willing to play around and see if that will happen. Another amazing technology is 3D printing, and I wish I had more time to talk to you about the implications of it. But in the healthcare space, we're already 3D printing stem cells. We're printing cartilage. We're printing 3D images of unborn fetuses. We're printing from MRIs and CT scans, complete facial and skeletal structures, and fitting in replacement titanium jawbones. Some pretty amazing technology. But this is only the start. Where we're going with this is what we would call bioprinting, and that is the actual printing of living organs. Please.
It's the stuff of science fiction, but experts say that in a few decades, scientists...
If you think this is science fiction, think again. There's a company called Organovo in the United States that has already received FDA approval to use liver tissue that they are bioprinting to do drug testing for liver remedy or liver illnesses. Is it possible in the future that a movie like Face Off, which starred Nick Cage and John Travolta, where literally they could have each other's faces on their face, be done using this kind of technology? It's possible. We're getting into the realm where science fiction is suddenly becoming science reality. And the question will be, how do we ensure that this technology is used for the good of humanity rather than by criminals who look to exploit the rest of us? And it's not just bioprinting. There's a really interesting innovation from the University of Glasgow in Scotland that is looking to do molecular level printing, organic chemicals. And what they are looking at is the ability to print drugs from a 3D printer. There can be enormous benefits in doing that because you would get the exact dosage that you need. But by the same token, it could present real problems for law enforcement when all you have to do is buy a bunch of random chemicals and maybe tweak them a little bit, and suddenly you're printing designer drugs that look like something that might be illicit, and they're constantly changing. There's the potential for a whole new range of punk chemists to come out there and use these technologies. And then we have home automation. Our homes are getting smarter. We've got cameras that tell us who's outside of our house. We have smart locks. We have smart fridges. Some of the fridges that are available today are like these shown in LG, where they're using a camera to basically show you the contents of your fridge, and you can send a text to your fridge and find out what's in it. But in the future, that's going to change. Instead of using cameras, everything that you buy is going to have RFID chips on the packaging, and your fridge is going to be able to do things like automatically order the staples that you want to have, like milk or fresh lettuce, fresh tomatoes. Last week, I read that Samsung has said that by 2017, 90% of their white goods will be smart. They'll be internet connected. By 2020, 100% of their white goods, and they are not the only manufacturer that is moving in this direction. But if you've got a machine ordering things on your behalf, could something go wrong? Well, last year in Portugal, a smart bot ended up in a bit of an endless loop, and in 1 minute ordered $20,000 worth of a cleaning product. Things can go wrong with software, and not only that, the thing that scares me the most is that security is an afterthought in so many of these Internet of Things devices. It's simply not there or not enabled. And what happens if your home catches a virus? What would you do if you came home, wave your phone at your smart lock, and it doesn't open? Okay, you use your key to get in, and suddenly you find you can't turn on any appliance, and everything in your house doesn't work. And you get ransomware on your phone telling you to pay $100 or $1,000 or some other amount to get in your house. Who are you going to call? You might call the police, but are they going to fix your house for you? Who's going to do that? We're also moving to a world of smart cities where sensors are going to be everywhere. We'll be able to do really smart things like sending refuse collectors to a trash bin only when a sensor says that there's refuse of a certain level to pick up and get rid of. But is there an opportunity for cyber criminals to hack into this interconnected world? Let me share a scenario written by an author by the name of Brian Prophet, and it was called The Internet of Things Might Kill You. So this is in New York City on a hot summer day, the island of Manhattan. The Holland Tunnel is 1.5 miles long. There are 84 massive fans that control air intake, and they recycle the air every 90 seconds. One hot summer morning, all of them stop at the same time. The alarms that are supposed to sound when this happens mysteriously don't go off. The same thing is happening in every tunnel connecting New York, New Jersey. Suddenly, drivers getting woozy from carbon monoxide crash into guardrails, into each other, start falling asleep at the wheel. You can imagine the massive pileups as exits get blocked, cars light a fire, but that's not the only thing that's going wrong. In other thoroughfares, the latest model sports cars suddenly experience tire blowouts. They experience sudden massive bursts of acceleration or steering wheels that no longer work. And the same thing is happening all up and down the East Coast of America. In data centers, suddenly the cooling systems go off. And no matter what the techies try to do, they can't make these cooling systems go back on. So they have to shut down all the servers, impacting the economy throughout the United States, impacting responders like 9/11 or in Australia, 000. What I've just described is a cyber terrorism attack that takes advantage of the fact that everything is going to be connected and security is an afterthought. Now, in that description, I talked about next generation cars. And as much as I'd like to think that we're going to have a future with cool-looking cars like this, the reality is they're probably going to look something like this, like the Google car. Not all that exciting look-wise, but with lots of sensors on them. And there are a whole range of different models that we might see, including things like road trains, as I pictured here with the Volvo Platoon. Already in Australia, there's a test happening with Volvo in South Australia in November where they're going to shut down a major highway for a certain period and allow a driverless car to navigate on that highway under Australian conditions. It's not going to be an all-at-once type of thing. What you're going to see is the gradual implementation of what I would call autopilot mode. Already we have cars that are able to do self-parking. This is the next stage, but really what we're talking about are robot-driven cars that are interconnected. They're talking to each other, they're talking to sensors on the road, and they're talking to cloud-based navigation services. But what can happen? Well, already, and this is from last year, a QU2 researcher found that the CAN bus, which is the system in cars that controls all the microcontrollers in the different parts of the car, can easily be hacked into remotely, wirelessly. We're putting in all kinds of technologies into our car, but already we're not securing this. Already the cars can be hacked into. What's going to happen when they're completely robot-driven? What's going to happen when a robot-driven car sees fast enough in real time that a pedestrian is about to come across its path? Is it going to slam on the brakes, possibly killing or injuring the people in the car, causing a pileup behind? Does it run over the pedestrian? Who makes these ethical decisions? When I talk to roboticists about this, they're very much focused on the technology of the visualization and being able to detect these situations, but the rules or ethics behind it are something that is really being put off to later. Somebody else will solve it. Robotics is one of the major areas where we're going to see a whole range of innovation, and they come in lots of shapes and sizes. We'll start to see some humanoid-looking robots, but we'll also see things like the picture in the middle, which was designed by the Australian Centre for Field Robotics for Agriculture, that's laden with all sorts of sensors and manipulator arms, able to do things like spot spraying of weeds or pests in agriculture, or picking out the weeds with manipulator arms, or automotive factories like I'm showing in this other picture. One area where robotics is already making its imprint in Australia are flying robots, popularly known as drones. And they come in lots of shapes and sizes. Everything from big fixed-wing aircraft used in agriculture to the drones that we think of with the military to tiny bio-inspired insect-sized drones that if it were sitting on a shelf in your room, would you know that it has a high-definition camera and is filming you? To little hobbyist things. In Australia, we're already using drones for asset inspection, and it makes a lot of sense. It's much cheaper than flying helicopters or sending people to climb ladders. We're using them to inspect oil rigs, utility lines, gas lines, mobile towers, all sorts of things. In the real estate industry, there are many companies that are using drones for videography to be able to create these magnificent views of properties. But sometimes they happen to capture people next door. There was an incident in Victoria not too long ago where a real estate agent was filming a house, inadvertently caught a neighbor nude sunbathing, posted it onto the website before actually looking at what it was they posted, and it caused a major uproar, and rightly so. There are company liabilities that go along with that, and of course it's a massive violation of privacy. Amazon is very serious about using drones to be able to get deliveries to your door within 30 minutes of you ordering it. And I'll say a bit more about Amazon, but I want to show you Netflix's response to Amazon's announcement last year.
Here at Netflix, we're committed to cutting-edge advancements in entertainment.
Now, obviously, that's a tongue-in-cheek look, but it raises some really important issues of where do we allow these drones to go or not go? Where are the designated delivery drop-off zones? And what would happen if a drone was equipped with something like an explosive and seriously hit a building? Most people thought that Amazon, when they made their announcement of Air Prime last year, was doing a publicity stunt. But 2 weeks ago at a NASA conference, they put a paper together that was a very considered look at segregating airspace, creating highways in the sky for drones, describing different equipment classes of vehicles, different weights, different capabilities, like having onboard sensors to be able to do collision avoidance, having onboard sensors and communication devices to communicate both with each other and in air traffic control. Segregating airspace where 200 feet and below might be used for hobbyists or videographers, and from 200 to 400 feet, you have drones that are flying at high speeds of 100 or more kilometers an hour. Australia needs to be in that discussion. There have been safety incidents already. Late last year, there was a drunken intelligence officer that at 3 o'clock in the morning decided that he was going to fly his friend's drone and managed to evade the perimeter of the White House, one of the most secure places on this planet, and got there. What if this drone was laden with an explosive or some sort of bioagent? Drones have crashed at the top of high-rise buildings on the 30th floor. There have been major incidents in the US that the Washington Post tracked where military-controlled drones had crashed over the last 2 years, and there have been a lot of them, as well as near misses with aircraft. A researcher came out just a few weeks ago with an attack vector for drones that showed how sound waves could be used to impact the gyroscope inside the drone and literally make it crash. So we're starting to see ways that criminals might be able to manipulate these things. And a security researcher in the UK equipped a drone with a flying Wi-Fi hotspot that he was looking to test vulnerabilities in smartphones, and it was pretending to be familiar networks like Starbucks or McDonald's, and getting you to connect to your familiar network. Your phone does it automatically, and lo and behold, you're doing internet banking or Facebook or all these other things, and suddenly that information is available to a hacker using a drone with a flying Wi-Fi hotspot. There have been hacks of robots that are being used for telesurgery. You may not be aware that robotic telesurgery has been happening since 2001, and there are protocols that are used to control the robot and the haptics, the touch and feel that the remote surgeon used. A couple of weeks ago, I read about a hack, luckily by researchers. They were able to stop the surgery in its tracks, but it could get much worse. If you've got control of a machine that's got scalpels and lasers, what harm could you possibly do? And once again, the problem is that security is an afterthought. There are also robots that have been shown to be controlled by thought waves. And I know that sounds really science fiction, but as far back as 2012, researchers in Israel used functional MRI to be able to read the blood flow of their actions like walk, move, turn the arm, lift it up and down. And it felt so real to them from 2,000 miles away. The robots in France, the researchers in Israel, somebody picked up the robot and they're like, "Oi, put me down." It feels real. Could that be hacked into? Of course it can. Will we someday have replicants, what I call fleshbots, combine 3D bioprinting with robotics and artificial intelligence? Will we have creatures like this walking out amongst us? Could they mimic a human and get into places that someone's authorized for, but it's not really them? Artificial intelligence underpins a lot of these technologies. A report by CETA came out about 3 weeks ago, and what they said was that 40% of Australian jobs could disappear by 2025 because of automation. At extreme risks are any jobs that involve drivers, but it's not just blue-collar jobs. Anything that can be automated. The legal profession might be automated. Writing stories might be automated. Dare I say, policing might be automated. Where is this all going? Well, one of the things that artificial intelligence is being used for in the US by IARPA is to be able to detect these massive denial of service attacks or attempts to get into sensor networks in an attempt to stop cybercrime in its tracks. And I think we'd all agree that the scenario I shared of cyber terrorism is one that we definitely would not want to see happen. A system like this could very well prevent that kind of attack, but could it go a step too far? Could we end up in a Minority Report scenario where suddenly you may be deemed to commit a future crime and you're arrested for something you haven't actually done? We need to think about these things before we put these systems into place. Ladies and gentlemen, we are at a tipping point right now. The technologies that we are deploying have the ability to greatly benefit so many people and so many businesses in so many walks of life. But equally so, they can be abused by cyber criminals. And the biggest threat that I see is that security is an afterthought. Privacy is an afterthought. Ethics are an afterthought. The future that we live in is up to each one of us. Will we allow technology to enrich our lives or enslave us? The choice is ours. Thank you.